We began these streams on Monday. And here we are just a few days later, and the stark contrast of where we were on Monday. Now, when I say we, I need to actually put context to that, because I'm going to talk a little bit here right off the bat about the United States. But let's not forget where certain parts of the world, i.e. Italy, Germany, still China, etc., were at even on Monday. And we saw that progress throughout the week, starting on Monday, hitting it on Wednesday, and here we are. If you go and listen to or were a part of these last two streams this week, you would think that they were months apart. But the reality is they were days, and in some cases hours, from the moment that someone had reported something happening in their country, using Mr. Kaji as an example, to a few hours later when the country of Italy is in full lockdown. Now, I don't think I need to tell you or reiterate everything that has happened in the last, 24 to 48 hours. If you're here in the United States, you're probably not avoiding that. I do have some updates. Yesterday at around 5 p.m. my time, we did get notification from my son's school that his schools were going to be closed until the 24th, and that they were going to be making the call somewhere between the 20th through the 23rd to let us know if those classes would be going digital. At this point, I just expect that school may be out for the rest of this semester for us, for our district. But things are definitely changing. So good morning. If you've never tuned into one of these streams, let me talk a little bit about who I am, what we're doing, and what we hope to accomplish here. You probably already know, my name is djWHEAT. I work for Twitch. I'm the director of creator development. I've been a streamer for about 10 years. And the coronavirus is something that I personally have been following since January. Now, when I say I've been following it, it is something where I've certainly been keeping an eye on the news and following along. And then I would say near the beginning of February is where I started to get hyper-focused on what was happening. And nothing was happening in the United States at that time, pretty much nothing. But it was what was happening around the rest of the world that really locked me in and made me take real close attention and interest in what was going on. And that's one of the goals and the aims of what we're doing here today. I do believe that Twitch as a global platform uniquely connects us in ways that are hard to totally quantify, because a lot of times it's me, right, or a streamer, and it's you and a broadcaster and an audience, and next to your name, there's not necessarily a country flag or your age or anything like that. But that's the beauty of this platform, right? Is that there are, at any given time in a channel, there are people from, a European nation, from the United States, from Australia, from South America. And we've been able to really, really tap into that by opening up the phones and making this an information depository, a place where you share your experiences and your stories, or a place that you ask questions, because a lot of shit is happening all around the world, and no one can know everything, right? I keep bringing them up, but one of the most fascinating things for me has been getting calls from Mr. Kaji, who is located inside of Italy and has given us a stark perspective on what is actually going down there. Because yes, you can open up your favorite media outlet, webpage, whatever, and you can read what is going on from a journalist, media outlet, sometimes government perspective. But when you hear boots on the ground perspective, when you hear another human who is just like you and just like me share their experiences, to me, that's right. In a world where you kind of got to ask yourself, who can you trust? I kind of feel like I trust the netizens of Twitch more than I trust our gut. Now, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that because I need to trust our government officials and those who are working to, but I'm talking about their stories and their experiences. What is happening that we don't know about? What is happening that might not be making the front lines, the headlines? So this to me is a really unique opportunity for us to share and come together and have a respectful discussion about what is going on, to be a place where people can feel safe and not afraid to ask questions. Do you know about this? Do you know about that? It is really important to me that we do remain civil. We have respectful discussions. That does not mean we cannot disagree, right? We are kind of past a lot of the point of disagree, right? This isn't a 3-hour-long rant about Trump and the administration. I've done that already. We don't need to revisit. That is a horse that needs not be beaten. If you want that, go check out my Facebook. I still complain about it pretty regularly. To me, this is more about finding out what is happening now. What are your questions about what is happening? What do we think might happen? And you need to be warned that you might hear some things that you don't agree with. You might hear some things that make you angry. There is a lot of speculation that we might put out there. But in reality, so far, nearly everything that we have discussed over the course of this week has either happened or is beginning to happen in other countries. So we're not here to fearmonger. We're not here to create a panic. The coronavirus did that for us. I do have a little update on my own. I got distracted by this. I got distracted by this particular message that came up from Gay Vulture, and it says the UK government aren't doing anything right now, and the Prime Minister said expect loved ones to die before their time. Again, we're not going to go into the mishandling of this, although we're happy to talk about it, but we could spend hours and hours and hours and hours pointing out all of the mishandling. I think it's important to talk about what could this mishandling lead to, especially in a country like the UK. So I kind of said it on Facebook and Twitter, is that I've suspended my gaming streams. I'm sorry for those of you that wanted to continue to watch me play through Hollow Knight, and Ori is coming out, or has come out. Doom Eternal's right around the corner. I didn't have any plans to play Animal Crossing, so that we're good there. Until further notice, this is going to kind of be our focus.
Welcome to
Tofu Beans, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. I appreciate it. So right now, the only game I'm thinking about is Path of Exile, because I feel like that's going to be my safe place. I'm going to go into this world so that I don't have to worry about this other world.
Welcome to Epileptic Gaming.
Because I think one of the things that we need to practice and think about. And let me talk about this, and then we'll talk about how you can join in on the conversation.
Welcome to Epileptic Gaming.
Is allowing yourself to take a break from what is happening.
Welcome to Epileptic Gaming.
Right, to step away from the television screen, to digest a lot of the information that you might be hearing. I'm guilty of this. I sit there and I have my, 2 pages that I update and review regularly, which we will look at here before we open up the phones. Reading the news, and frankly, the velocity in which news is coming out. I mean, let's just do a quick review, right? The president did their address here in the United States. Within moments, we had the NBA canceled. Within moments, we had, so much has happened that I'm having a hard time now keeping track of the timeline. The 30-day travel ban. Of course, we're not going to talk really about all of the misinformation that was given out and then corrected, but we had the travel ban. We had the NBA. We've had Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, also NBA players from the Utah Jazz. To me, these are very unfortunate moments, but I think they came in a very opportune time. And why is that? I mean, do I want Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson and the basketball players of the Utah Jazz to have corona? Absolutely not. You know why I am glad that they have come out and publicly speak about it? Because it's making people open their fucking eyes. For once, this isn't necessarily someone they know, but it's someone they know. There is a moment that, oh my God, if Tom Hanks can get it, then maybe I can. I don't know how that works. I was already to that point. But just to see how that one thing, how shutting down the NBA for suspending the season, shutting it down is not fair to say, suspending the season, this has now had an effect on people. And now they need to care. So if you've been here the last few days, if you've been participating in the conversation, as crappy as it sounds, congratulations, here's your merit badge, right? You were there. You were already there. And now many beautiful people, as our president would say, have caught up now. So since that has happened, I mentioned to you just moments ago that my son's school was canceled, and there is some silver lining to that, right? He was already going to be in spring break for part of that. He is in a district where they can do digital classes, and he's homeschooled for the past 4 years, so this is like not a big deal to us. In fact, in a weird way, I've been working from home since last July. We homeschooled Mini-Wheat for 4 years in San Francisco. Apparently, our family has been training for this moment for quite some time. But public schools around the United States are closing. Some universities are closing for the remainder of the semester. Some universities have closed, saying we're going to reopen once we figure out how to do digital classes. Others have just straight up said, no more school until April, and then we'll make, a judgment call. But you realize the ripple that this causes, right? You have schools closing, which means that parents need to find alternate way to take care of their kids. And that means that you may have to work from home. That means that people might not have the capacity to work from home. That means that there could be a loss of income. That means that there could be it, right? So we are now finally experiencing, frankly, what I think I think we should have been here a week ago. That's okay though. I've seen pictures of and reports from my friends that they've had 90-minute to 2-hour lines in the grocery stores Apparently, people are still fucking buying toilet paper, which I have no idea. Maybe that's one of the things we should talk about. If you're going to panic buy, what are the smart things to panic buy? Because toilet paper isn't it. Toilet paper is not going to mean shit if you have nothing to put into your body to go out, right? You should be buying canned goods. You should be buying non-perishables. You should be buying ramen. These aren't necessarily some of the most healthy things for you, but they're some of the things that are going to stay on the shelf for a long time if for some reason stores decide that they have to close or figure out an alternate method to get you your goods. Rice, pasta, canned vegetables, canned fruit, things that don't go bad. Right? Like, you got to think about it too. For example, we have 10 boxes of mac and cheese. Yes, pasta on one hand. That's like a hit the oh shit button. You need milk to make mac and cheese. Milk's something that could realistically be more difficult to get later on, right? So you kind of have to be thinking about that. I don't know that we're necessarily going to talk about that. Man. So let's do a stat check-in. But before I do that, let me explain how we do open phones here on our show. So the way it works is that I ask you to join my Discord. Come on into the Fields of Wheat. Of Tofu Beans. Once again, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. I appreciate that. Come into my Discord, and we have a channel. It's a voice channel, and it's called Phones. So if you join that channel, that is basically like picking up the phone and calling me, right? So I will announce you on the stream, hey, we're going to bring in Super Caller 51, and I will bring you into the on-air channel, which is locked. You can't just join this for obvious reasons. And then we can have a conversation. Now, here's the things that I really want everyone to share. When you do call in, I'm probably going to ask you where you're from, right? I want to know what country you're in. I think that's important. We want to give context. You can share your story, your experience. You can ask a question. You can just let me ask you questions about the country that you might be in. Either way, it is sort of an open forum, right? This is a stage that I'm on that you are welcome to come up on. We share this mic, we have a conversation, and anything's game. The one thing is, like, we're talking about COVID-19. We're talking about the effect that it's had on the world. We're talking about the effect that it could potentially have on our world. And more importantly, we're trying to share a global perspective of what is happening. Because still, you might be in a country that might only have 1 case or 2 cases or 4 cases. But when you start to hear about the countries that were there just a couple weeks ago, that allows you to be better prepared. That allows us to have more sympathy for what is going on, etc. So I haven't seen Tasteless podcasts about it. It says South Korea has been doing great at containing it. A lot of interesting stuff as Korean cult spreading it, StarCraft being affected, and absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about that since Monday. I have consistently used South Korea as an example for a country that chose, instead of doing mass quarantines, to go very aggressive on testing, and that has been shown to be helpful. That was smart. I'm not surprised to hear that about South Korea. I'll have to check it out. So, Gay Vulture, if you would just link that to me in the Discord, that would be great. Now, we're going to jump to our first caller, Omni Waffle, in just a moment. But first, many people ask, Wheat, what are the resources that you use to follow along COVID-19? So there are two tracking resources that I use. And then as far as information is concerned, information, unfortunately, there's no one right answer. Information for me is something that you read and then you try to find a fact check or another article, another journalist, another media expert who says the same thing, right? In this day and age, we've already seen it. People taking advantage of coronavirus through scamming. There's been robocallers that have been like, do you need a free coronavirus test? Like, wire us $100 now and we'll send it to your door. It's bullshit, right? People are taking advantage of that in the worst and most just crappy ways. So let me show, and then we will get to callers. Thank you already. We've got a couple of callers sitting in the channel. We're gonna answer you in the order in which you come in. But once again, let's look at what we've got here. Now, these are still numbers up from yesterday, and this particular page is by a group called Worldometer. They do a bunch of different stat-based lists. Worldometer, this exact URL is worldometers.info/coronavirus. So I'm going to update this so we can see basically the last time I checked it on my computer yesterday, what have the updates been? It's at 134,000 deaths and cases, and 4,900 deaths. I'm going to guess it's going to, I don't know, it's going to go up to, okay, so thankfully we're only up to 138 cases. There are about 5,100 deaths that have been recorded. I do believe that there are probably a lot more deaths, and I'm not saying a significant, I'm not talking tens of thousands, but I would likely say there are more deaths based off of the fact that people have probably died without having been identified as having the coronavirus. Good news is we have quite a few recovered cases too, which shows us that, hey, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for this. A lot of really interesting stuff in terms of like linear and logarithmic looks at the total cases and the total deaths. But if you're in Silicon Valley, if you're in a data-driven company, you've probably heard up and to the right is really good. This is like the one time when up and to the right is really shitty and really bad. We want to see down and to the right, not up and to the right. So a few things you should note. This is the reason I use the world meters is because it's got a country by country breakdown that you can then click into based off of a lot of the countries. Some of the hot countries that we've been watching, obviously Italy, every day at 17 GMT, that is when they update their cases. So a lot of people will often be like, oh my God, did you see Italy suddenly jump to 2,000 cases? That's because they basically do one press conference every day to announce like, this is how many cases that have been discovered over the course of the last day. And you can always tell if you go up here, it shows the last update. So when this hits 17 GMT, that is typically when you're going to see an update on how many new cases Italy has. But as of yesterday, 15,000 total cases active, 1,000 deaths. And I think that number in particular is the one that gets really scary. You are talking about a very, very large percentage ratio or large percentage of deaths compared to cases. And depending on what country, what state, whatever you're looking at, it can look awfully low. The fact of the matter is that it's not always the case, right? And you can't also just say, well, then, X percent of people are just going to die. Like, it's not necessarily like that, right? This also takes into consideration, like, what are the hospital resources that are being used, that are available, et cetera? What capacity is there? How is the testing in this country? So just something to be aware of if you're looking at this. You can't necessarily take all of this data at from a number perspective. USA specifically, as we'll see on this other graph I'm about to show you, has probably had its scariest jump that we've seen. But Iran reporting a large number of cases. Spain's been climbing. Germany's been climbing. France. And I think that UK is the next country to climb that hasn't climbed yet. Maybe we'll hear from someone from the UK. I think that might be important because I do feel like some of what I have read from the netizens of the UK are saying that they're very concerned that people aren't taking this seriously, similar narratives to what we've been hearing here in the United States. Anyway, there is obviously a full breakdown of individual cities. Now, let's do like one harsh reality check, right? Hold on. First and foremost, how many countries? I think it says up here at the top. 132 countries out of about 190, 191. 132 countries. That's not everywhere, but that's damn near everywhere. A lot of folks say, yeah, but we only have one case. We only have one case. We only have 2 cases. We only have 3 cases. Let me give you a timeline point as it relates to TwitchCon. When TwitchCon was canceled, Netherlands had about 20 cases, right? And that doesn't seem like that much. When we scroll up and look at how many cases Netherlands has now, 804. Right? So you might want to be a President Trump and say, I like the numbers. I like the numbers at 1. That's where they should stay. But that's pretty unlikely. Right? Like 1 only represents 1 person who is tested positive. What it doesn't represent is the X of how many other people have potentially got it because of this 1 case. So if you have a 1 next to your country, you need to take it seriously. If you have a 6 next to your country, you need to take it seriously, because many of these countries up here that now have 7,000 cases or 8,000 cases or 800 cases or 700 cases, we were there. It was just 2 weeks ago that we had 15 cases in the United States, and now we've got 1,800 and probably even more. So that is worldmeters.info. Now, if you're in the United States or Canada, there is another. It's coronavirus.1.3acres.com, and I can paste these in Discord or in chat if you would like to see those. I know that this is well over, so 1773. Now, keep in mind, too, well, you'd be like, well, wait a second. Didn't it say 1,800? So these both use aggregates from other data sources and aren't always up to date. So, right, don't just preach everything off of one website. You also need to, right, be checking around and looking at all of the other sites. Some of them update on a 15-minute interval. Some of them update on a 40-minute interval. It just depends. What's interesting about this particular one for the COVID-19 in USA and Canada is you can click on the individual state, or if you're looking at Canada, the individual province, and it will actually give you a log line of every single case that has been reported with a news reference to go along with it. So it's not like you're clicking on Ontario and then there's just like, 50 more people got it. They've got a link to the report that for that case. And I think that is really very interesting and really helpful. So the other thing too is that any of the dotted lines that you might see here, and let me make this one a little bit bigger. Any of the dotted lines that you might see here is a state that has declared an emergency, a medical emergency. It allows them to exercise a few different things or unlock certain funds. You can see here that almost every single state has a dotted line around it. especially the dotted lines of our most concentrated course of cases, which are California, Washington, New York, and undoubtedly soon to be Florida, which have just, in my opinion, not probably need help testing. Massachusetts, which is also up to the hundreds, is very scary considering that's where PAX East took place, and PAX East was a large gathering, and I, still worried that we may hear from people that may have gotten that while at PAX, but we don't know that. The speculation. You can click on, say, like Nebraska. It will tell you this is the 11th case reported in Nebraska. Some will say, this is amazing. He recently traveled back to Nebraska from Minneapolis and was on the same connecting flight as the person who is Nebraska's first case. So a lot of times you will see links that link all over the world. Or in the area, right, to kind of show some of the community or communal infection. So these are my two go-to resources. I have and do suggest the coronavirus subreddit, and I know you're going to be like, whoa, you're suggesting Reddit. Now, what I'm suggesting the subreddit for is that several doctors have been using the subreddit as a way to help spread their stories, their information, some of that information that is not necessarily being published, some of that information that is not necessarily making it to our headlines. And you have to seek that out. The good news is that people aren't letting people go on there and be like, I'm a keyboard warrior. Like, I'm a doctor and you're all idiots. This isn't going to do it. Right? These doctors are being fact checked as and essentially being verified, if you will. Right? So proceed with caution, but know that if you do a little bit of digging, you can find some really interesting perspectives, right? Like a great example is a lot of people are like, hey, have you listened to the Joe Rogan podcast? Have you listened to, like, there's some great stuff in there. I haven't listened to all of it, but many of the stuff that's in there in that podcast was actually talked about weeks ago by doctors from Italy who posted on Reddit. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but there's some interesting perspectives out here. It's not much different, right? Like, than what we're doing here. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy that knows how to stream, how to talk in a microphone, and how to bring people together. You're bringing the stories. You're bringing the experiences. So with that, let's go ahead and take our first caller. And I believe that I can also check. I believe OmniWaffle was our first caller today. But thankfully, I forgot that Kim set up a bot that I can just look. And so I know. Voice join, OmniWaffle, boom. We're going to be bringing OmniWaffle on. It looks like we have a lot of callers, and I'm going to shut up now. I want to hear from you. So let's bring on our first caller today, and that is going to be OmniWaffle. OmniWaffle, hello. Oh, shit. I just realized. One sec. I don't have my... All right. OmniWaffle, hello. Hey, what's up? Sorry, I don't have my good voice piping into Discord, so hopefully this doesn't sound too crappy.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Great. Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I mean, I feel like I've been prepared for a lot of what is happening now. And yeah. I'm thankful because as I'm seeing a lot of my friends and maybe even some family go into panic mode, it feels good to be someone who could say, all right, here's what we could do. Here's what you should be concerned about. Here's what, and frankly, it feels good to be able to bring people together in this time. So I do occasionally still get those flashes when it's like, oh my gosh, like this is too much. I mean, when Mini Wheat School got canceled yesterday, we were expecting it, but it became real, right? So that's been the weird part of this is these things that we've been talking about, some of these things for weeks now becoming real. So
Yeah.
how are you?
Man, I'm good. It's first thing I want to say is like death should never be a qualifier for taking a potential pandemic seriously.
Thank you.
And that seems to be kind of like the running rhetoric. And like you were talking about mini wheat, like I mean, obviously that's not necessarily panic, but that's like there are points where you're realizing that you're having to pivot your life in a very meaningful way. Like your day-to-day routine is going to change a little bit, like how you have to think about like, if he was in school, it's like cool, school's got him covered. I'm worried about me and the missus and the pets and stuff like that, and then I can worry about him if something goes wrong there, but like it's compartmentalized, right? And I think everybody is dealing with that in different ways. So like,
Right.
me, I'm lead event coordinator for GCX down here in Florida.
Right.
So from an event perspective, we're like, okay, what does our charity marathon look like? Okay, cool. How do we leverage that charity marathon to make sure that we're, like you said, we're bringing people together? Because right now, like, in years past when there's tragedy, everybody huddles around the TV or the radio, and like the president or the vice president or his wife hops on and they're just like, this is the cool stuff that's still going on. Like
Right.
these are some inspiring stories about things that are happening, like something that like brings everybody together, brings the tension down, something that's like, we can do this. And right now, at least in American culture, and I think to a lesser extent, world culture, we don't have a lot of that
You're
in
right.
like circulated media. So like people like yourself, broadcasters, events that are pivoting to digital, we have an incredible opportunity to kind of like be that voice and be that shelter, which I'm really excited about.
I
So
I agree. I mean, it is I've been in this streaming game for a long time, and one of the things that has always drawn me to it, even all the way back in the early audio days, is I was always blown away by the fact that, people from Croatia would come in and watch my Quake broadcast back in the day, right? Or listen to them or whatever. And we truly are globally connected. But when you're looking at it through the lens of like watching CNN or reading the newspaper, you feel like you're reading a story about another planet, right? A million miles
mhm.
away. But I do feel like that this medium and this platform specifically does virtually create that closeness, right? I mean, isn't that one of the reasons why a platform like Twitch is really interesting? So to your point, like, yes, yesterday, one of the most amazing things that I saw was the Phoenix Suns announcing like, hey, our season might be canceled, but we're still going to play it out. We're going to be streaming our game versus the Dallas Mavericks on NBA 2K. And that's kind of amazing, right? Like that is kind of amazing that instead of just like hunkering down, how can we still kind of continue on with our lives? Because it is important, right? We can't just be under a blanket of negativity and bad news, and people still have to work, and people still need to be entertained, and causes still need to be raised for. And I'm sure there's going to be many, many ways to use, like you mentioned, these voices for a good cause to help a lot of people who are going to be devastated by this on some level. So I agree 1,000%, and I really appreciate that you bring that perspective. And I agree, death should not be a qualifier for this. I talked to my father yesterday, who is starkly on the opposite side of where I am from a views perspective. He's taking this seriously, but he said to me, we even said 60 days as of yesterday, because he pulled the old like, oh, well, the numbers and, it's not that bad. And so I wasn't interested in getting in an argument with him, but we said in 60 days, we're going to check in, and we both hope that he's right and that I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, that honestly shouldn't matter. Like you said, right? Like people are still going to suffer. People are going to be economically affected by this. Education is going to get disrupted. There's a slew of things outside of just people dying, which is horrible in and of itself. But anyway, I didn't mean to take over the call. So
Oh no, totally. I mean, like we realistically, and you've seen it the world over, some countries are a little bit better positioned for it. But a couple things to that, like one, and I am in no way, shape, or form making any specific reference to anything, but we have to realize that in this day and age that is very media driven, a lot of our news sources are to a certain extent very biased interpretations of the news. And of course, like varying degrees of that, right? Which is fine,
sure.
but we're at a point where we can't necessarily turn to a news source and get an accurate representation of something that we as a citizen that's trying to figure out how to move forward in our daily life can consume that and use that as the basis of the decisions that we make, right? um which is unfortunate because like you have one place that's saying, oh, it's the worst thing in the world, everything's terrible, and another place is like, oh, it's no big deal, don't worry about it, stock market, da 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 da.
Right.
And so that's why sources like you were using are really, really important. That's why dialogue, like, even though you and your father have, not necessarily diametrically opposed views, but like varying degrees of understanding and worry about what's happening. And realistically, at a greater level, like we shouldn't necessarily have to have that discussion, but discussions like that are super important because it helps more accurately shape our individual responses to things because everybody has a different one, right? Like a mom of 4 kids is going to be a little bit more scared of this than like, me, I'm single and like I don't have a lot to worry about. I'm worried about
Definitely.
people that I love, but like varying degrees of response. Two, like nobody is really prepared for this. Like a lot of countries are better prepared in different ways than others, but no one has had like a really good like response, and no one's really going to live well through this, right? So the United States right now, being that we're not a super socialized country, is running into the wall of like, we're going to have to start shutting down businesses, but we don't really have anything in place to continue to allow citizens to be citizens in the face of not being able to earn an income,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But you have social countries that are pushing the limits of what they as a country can handle, and everybody has a very specific breaking point. Like someone was mentioning it earlier, like in Italy, not that there's anything wrong with it, but there's a lot of cultural implications of how Italians greet each other and interact with each other that contribute to the spread of the virus. Whereas a lot of people are like, oh, no, Italy's just really bad and it's a social country. Obviously, the virus isn't wrong. It's like, no, like Italians like shake hands and smooch each other on the cheek when they greet each other. Like it's a significantly more like family oriented country. They responded really quickly. It's just things got real bad
Right.
real fast, and it's doing the same just about everywhere. So,
Yeah, and I mean that's a good point, and I think that is why being able to share sort of some of these experiences and hearing people from other countries who are explaining, like obviously, to your point, right? Media in the United States right now, as of pretty much the moment that Trump's Oval Office address was done, suddenly, right, the news then. It was just like it was the triple, quadruple whammy. And
mhm.
I don't think that we have gone away. I said on Wednesday that most of the news was about 75% coronavirus. A lot of it was around the Oakland cruise ship, the second cruise ship that was docked. And then, of course, we had Super Tuesday too. And then on Wednesday night, it was just like it was a complete shift into fifth gear for the news cycle. So you can't not ignore it right now. In fact, politics for once has kind of just taken a back seat,
Mhm.
because that's what everyone would be talking about at this point. Now, I am glad that people are getting informed. And if Fox News or CNN or whatever, that's your only source, at least you're getting some level. But to kind of what you were saying, there still needs to, each individual needs to kind of distill that information understand how these things are going to be affecting them. I do think that a lot of people got shocked by these school closings. Or at least in our household, we have been expecting that. That has been something that we have been prepared for. In fact, I even talked about on some of my shows my concern for schools that are in lower income areas across the United States that don't necessarily have the digital technology or don't necessarily have the equipment at home to be able to participate in digital classes. So, to your point, like we're entering a phase in an era that technologically we can get through, but people are not this. It's incredible disruptor, right? Incredible disruptor, especially from a workforce perspective. And now who's going to take care of my kids while they're out of school until the end of potentially the end of March or beyond?
Mm-hmm.
It is really scary from that perspective. And at one point my wife almost was just like, what the hell are you talking about? But last week, I turned to my wife and I said, Jen, they're going to start closing schools pretty soon. And, this is just a idea in my head, but we have a home where there's technology, we've got equipment. If we have friends or family that has kids that need a place, like maybe we can do that. And I hope that people are thinking about that. Not saying I want to like help advance any spread, but like I just want to help people through this time
Mm-hmm.
however I can.
Yep.
And so it is really, really important that people take some moments today and kind of look at how this could affect them, just like you said, right? I mean, as a single individual, I've just got to worry about my household. Might be a little bit easier than, oh my gosh, I do have 4 kids, and now they're closing my daycare, and if I don't go to work, like, how am I going to pay rent next month? This
Mm-hmm.
is, it's scary, and I do hope that we see programs and things put into place that will help individuals in need. Some people are obviously better off than others, but this is the kind of thing that I worry about a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like to that point, like one of the things that I've been doing is I have a lot of friends or just acquaintances back home that do have a lot of kids, and a lot of them work in the more blue collar industries that they're going to be the last things that are going to shut their doors and say, hey, don't come to work, even though realistically they may likely realistically need to be considered to be the first to close their doors. And so there's 3 or 4 families that we've kind of like, okay, cool, here's the most affordable rover cam, get that set up, get that in there so that you can hop on your phone. And okay, your kids are like 13, right? It's not ideal for them to be home, but they're not helpless. So I've got a couple
Right.
of them that are operating off of like pet cams that they overnight into their house so they can check in on their kids. Their kids have their phones, like they can do stuff. I have friends with younger kids. um One of the ladies, luckily, um one of the local moms up there has kind of been like, hey, cool, like I'll watch all of your kids, like the younger ones. So that's a big plus. But at the same time, like she's putting her and her children at a risk at that point, just because like children, super great, killer immune systems, but like prime carriers.
Hmm.
If they happen to run into anything in between point A and point B, a lot of people are, stopping, especially in Alabama, which is where I'm from, and where we're kind of like we're talking about, like a lot of them are like, yeah, hand sanitizer is the do all end all be all, but they don't understand that hand sanitizer doesn't wash things off your hands. It kills the bacteria, and then it sits there
Yeah.
on your hands, right? Um, and there's man, there's so many moving parts. We're not really prepared. Other countries are working a whole lot more on, like, we're suspending mortgage payments, we're suspending evictions. I know Miami-Dade down here just suspended evictions for the next month while coronavirus is going on, which is really important because like a lot of people
Wow.
realistically,
I
like
didn't
they
know
need to
that.
save their money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's slowly happening, but I mean, I can see where the reticence is, but realistically, like, I mean, obviously, you don't necessarily want the government, or governments at large looking at companies being like, I'm telling you how to run your business. But there's something to be said for someone getting up and be like, I'm imploring you to take a moment and recognize what's happening and show you that in this, like, this is good business. Like, maybe forget about March rent for a second and let people like figure themselves out, you know?
Right. Yeah. I do hope that we continue to hear more and more of those things. I think what is great about some of the declaration of state of emergency is it's allowing states to act independently and hopefully set a good example for other states in terms of how things could be handled, right? Like I could see credit card companies saying, "Hey, you don't have like we're lowering your minimum payments or no interest this month." Like there is going to need to be collaboration in areas that would be unheard of, right? A credit card company would ever what other scenario would they ever be like, "Yeah, we're going to lower monthly payments or we're going to waive interest this month so that, people just have a little bit more wiggle room as they figure all of this stuff out, right?" And in some way, cases or form, using like that as an example, that is actually a good strategy because what you don't want is for someone to essentially put themselves in a position where they're no longer going to be a customer, right? And I know it's weird to think about things that way, but businesses are now going to have to be evaluating a lot of what they do, how they do it, and how it works in this COVID-19 world if they want to, have stability beyond it. Because this, as we said, right, it's a big disruptor. But Omni Waffle, we've got a lot of callers, and I want to make sure that everyone can get heard today. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing some of your thoughts as well. Anything you want to close with?
No, just, be smart, be kind, continue to grow, continue to be in places like this and have these conversations. Extreme measures are not often necessarily the best measures, but being extreme is not also necessarily the worst. Schrodinger's decision.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Take
Thank you.
care. Be healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I just tried to. There we go. Okay. Our next caller, and I know we've got a lot of people in the queue, so we'll try. I'm the one who usually ends up yapping. I believe that coming up next we have got Salsa, and then Mr. Kaji and Ma, and then enlarged bread. So I'm gonna bring Salsa up next. Again, thank you for joining us, for being respectful. We want to hear your stories. If you want to ask questions, my platform's your platform during this time. So let me bring Salsa up. Salsa, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hello. Where are you from,
Let me
Salsa?
just let me just mute you on
Oh,
the
yes, please. Yeah, please
Twitch.
do.
All right, there you go. I'm actually from Brazil, but I'm living in Portugal right now.
Okay. Okay. So how are things?
Well, for anxious first, and yesterday I went to do some grocery shopping, and then that's when you realize that there is a problem when you see everybody else panic shopping,
What
and
are people panic shopping for in Portugal? Mostly
uh,
food, goods, or people buying up all the toilet paper? What's
yeah, the toilet paper thing it's worldwide, I believe. Because apparently in China that was the first thing to run out, so people decided to buy toilet paper pretty much everywhere else, and hand sanitizers and alcohol, those things are completely gone. We bought like two small bottles of hand sanitizer for us, and basic supplies. I mean, pasta, noodles, rice, because we don't know
Right.
if what's gonna happen, how it's gonna be in the following days. Right now, I think we're sitting at 100 cases here in Portugal, something like that.
Yeah, I was
100
just
plus.
looking actually as you called in. About 112 looks like, with
Yeah,
about 34 over the past reported day according to worldometers. Um
yeah,
yeah.
and it's pretty much a small place. So we live in near Lisbon, and we joke around here at the house that everything takes pretty much 20 minutes. Everywhere you want to go, it takes 20 minutes to go. uh, and it's a melting pot over here. So there's people from everywhere from Europe. And the first case was actually an Italian that came here, and and then it pretty much spread.
What is generally kind of the sentiment with folks? Would you, I mean, panic buying, I think is one thing, right? I'm
Hmm.
not surprised. People panic buying creates more panic buying. People
Yeah.
obviously are like, "Oh, well, I might not be taking this totally seriously, but I'm seeing all this other stuff happening and I just don't want to necessarily, miss out, or I don't want to not have something as a result." But
Hmm.
what is the thought, right? You're very close to a country that is in sort of a complete lockdown.
Yeah.
It is very likely that more countries, including the United States, are going to experience lockdowns, right? I read my first report from an individual here in the United States that talked about the fact that, you know, lockdown could happen almost on a state level, where if we might close the borders to a state to ensure that
Yeah.
that we mitigate spread. Of course, that comes with some other things that would be really scary, like a potential domestic travel ban, etc. But how would you say? I feel like if you're calling into the show, you've got a heightened sense of understanding, of concern. But how would you say most of the population is handling it?
I think it's right now is when you go out in the street, people are not really that much worried about it. You see that everyone is, um, you know, continuing their lives, and you see lots of people um gathering and talking and laughing. So you don't see that sort of worrying in people around the street. But
Do you
uh,
feel like that will
online,
change?
I think it is changing,
Okay.
because when you see the trending topics on Twitter here in Portugal, it's just that it's COVID-19 everywhere. People are just talking about that, and um, and then there's the thing in the supermarket that I mentioned, that I went yesterday, and the line was going across the entire supermarket to pay for the goods, and people buying canned stuff, uh, the toilet paper, repositioning of stocks,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think that they have the correct amount of worrying. Like you should be worried about the spread of the disease, but you just have to handle it well. Like the way you treat people, the way you clean your house, you clean yourself, and etc. I mean, it's just um, a matter of sanitizing.
Right.
And public transportation here is a big deal because people use it all the time,
What is
all
that?
kinds of
Bus? Do
public
you have bus,
bus,
train,
train, ferry,
ferry?
everything. Yeah. Um. Oh, the metro has been emptied. Subways. Yes. I'm talking to my wife. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm
'Cause
glad.
she's
I mean,
working.
I'm glad that right people are sharing this information and getting involved. We want to hear it all. So
Yeah. Yeah, because yesterday she was talking to her boss. We're localizers. I'm a video game localizer. She translates pretty much everything else, and she works on site, but her boss set up everything for remote work. So now she's working at home. All the computers in her office are online and set up for that. And the her colleagues already asking for a leave of absence or something like that. And there's a I think your project manager came from the United States, right? Yes. So she's not even going to the company. She's going straight home to work remotely.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'm also in a situation where, I mean, most of Silicon Valley in general has kind of gone to a work from home. Some really interesting examples of how that's changed things is, so I work from home all the time. Obviously, right? My headquarters for Twitch is in San Francisco. Amazon is in Seattle. The both Washington and California here are sort of hot spots in terms of coronavirus spread, but everyone is working from home now. And it's really interesting also to watch. Yeah, I have a lot of experience working from home. So for me,
mhm.
this is
Yeah,
it,
me
it
too.
it's kind of, it's not that much of a change, but I think I took for granted the struggle that many people would have figuring out how to do
Exactly.
their job working from home, or making sure like they have the setup and everything that they need to work from home. And I'm seeing more and more stories of that
Hmm.
pop up all over the place. I've got a good friend here in Nebraska because LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, right? They are concentrated mostly in Seattle and in San Francisco, but they have people all around the United States. So she's in Nebraska, but even their offices are working from home, and she's had
Hmm.
a ton of trouble, right? She works off of a Surface Pro. She's like, at work I have two monitors I can plug into. So this weekend she's going to come over. I'm going to give her one of my monitors, like my 8 monitors that I got sitting in my closet. Like, these are the types of things that may not be so apparent at the surface, but
Yeah.
are having an effect. Like, certainly the amount of work that people are able to do that are kind of transitioning to work from home is changing. So I really do have deep empathy for those folks, and I can only imagine if you
Hmm.
you were coming to a location to work and then you're forced to like stay in a hotel room or stay wherever you're staying and work from home.
Yeah. Here we share an apartment with two other people, and one of them is a maid. So she's basically not working at the moment.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And it's one of the things that we think about and go like, well, I'm lucky that I stream and that I um, translate remotely. I don't need to. I do freelance, so it's okay. I can work at home. But then you start realizing that some services they require people to be there, and
Exactly.
once that starts to be even more of a problem, then it's the amount of people working on those basic service starts to reduce.
Yeah. Well, I really, someone in chat was mentioning that Portugal is up to, about 100 cases, but it sounds like that happened very
Yeah.
quickly. Is that Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Was this like over the course of
it
this
did.
week, most of your cases compounded?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it
Okay.
was daunting, you know. And
So
I'm following because since I'm Brazilian, I'm also following the state of things in Brazil, you know, and the way they're handling it initially, it was very similar to the UK, as they were dismissive about it.
mm,
So now it's starting to become a problem, an issue, because the thing is, this epidemic pretty much started around Carnival, you know, and
right,
then
right.
so yeah, so people were like, ah, no, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna come to Brazil because we're strong over here. We can handle it. There were a lot of news about how the virus was spreading because of the cold weather. So they were saying, oh no, here is like 100 degrees, so it's okay. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
And
that's
well,
false.
there it is.
That is very
There
false,
it is.
and that unfortunately I think is false hope, right? I think people want to feel like they want to. If you're stuck in the ocean, you're gonna want to grab
Mhm.
onto something, and I feel like that is one of
Exactly.
those things that people have grabbed onto, which unfortunately just is not true, right? We already know that there are countries that have it right now that have significant spread, that it is a hot or humid climate or dry hot climate, and it is not necessarily showing any sort of effect. And there's actually one of the good things that has come out of the CDC here in the United States, and I advise anyone to kind of look it up, but there's some good depositories of sort of myths about coronavirus. Because as you can imagine, things like don't worry, once summer hits, it's going to go down, or now your pets can get it, or, you can spray yourself with bleach, which seems totally insane. But there are a bunch of things that have just sort of been declared as like, no, this isn't true, or it's only partially true, or whatever. And I would urge people to seek those resources out. They're actually really great in terms of understanding and avoiding kind of some of that misinformation that's coming out. But
Yes.
um, before I let you go, how is the government response right now in Portugal? Right? Like,
I think it's one
are
of the
you
best
experiencing? Are
right
you
now.
hearing school shutdowns and
Uh,
church and gatherings or that sort of thing?
well, the subway, that's one thing that we were
Okay.
talking about right now. They pretty much shut that down. Um, some some schools, I believe, and college too, right? They shut down some of them here in Portugal. They're teaching remotely, I believe. No, but they're the response is better than in lots of different locations right now.
That's good. That's good. I do feel like for those countries that have a lower number of cases, the time to act is now. Right, like
Yeah.
there is an opportunity, maybe going to the extreme, which is a tough thing to do. I do think one of the interesting things that's coming out is they flatten the curve, right? There at one point there was on one of these websites there was like a little cartoon that was up that was showing about the flattening of the curve. And the interesting thing about the flattening of the curve is that, and someone tweeted yesterday, I could try to find it, but they said if we are successful in flattening the curve, we're likely making we're taking drastic measures. The problem is that if the drastic measures work, the curve will flatten, and people might say we overreacted. When in
Yeah.
reality, the overreaction is what probably flattened the curve, and that is a very tough position for anyone to be in,
Yeah.
whether you are, on a personal level, on a government level, on a country level, et cetera. And that's why I really do, commend a country like Italy to show like, hey, these might be the extremes that you need to take, but look at what can happen if you take these measures.
Yeah.
So Yeah. Well,
I
uh,
think they took. I think in Italy, I think they took a little too long to start dealing with the issue. As of right now, I believe they started selecting the people who are going to be treated because they can't treat everyone,
mhm.
and that's a real problem right there because they're prioritizing the youth, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Salsa, thank you so much. I hope you and your wife stay safe. Give her my
yeah, we're
best.
trying.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your
Thank you for the
experiences.
time.
All right. Take care, Salsa. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right. It's always an interesting perspective. I believe next up is Mr. Kaji. Mr. Kaji is now a regular on the show, and just to put it into perspective, um, I want to read, and I hope he's okay with this, but I want to read a private message that Mr. Kaji sent to me because we talked on Monday, and he is in sort of central Italy, and northern Italy is on lockdown, and we talked when northern Italy had begun its lockdown, or it was a few days after that, and he had messaged me. He said, "Man, this is starting to feel like some kind of a bad joke. It's the second time that after our conversation, I hope I don't have any new news to discuss next time. And then things escalate before the day is even over," which has literally happened the last 2 days that he's come on. So I'm excited to bring Mr. Kaji on, though, because this is a great example of how getting an on the ground, a boots on the ground perspective of what is happening in other countries can help us better understand of what might happen in the countries that we live in, or what could happen in other countries. So I'm going to bring Mr. Kaji on right now. And hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello, good morning to you. How
Yeah,
you
good.
doing?
I'm doing good. I think the real question is how are you doing? You've been a source of some really interesting information, some really interesting perspectives, and I thank you. I hope you don't mind that I continue to use you as an example, but I think I've you kind of blew my mind the other day and introduced a new way of thinking when you talk to me about what is happening in your prisons.
Uh-huh.
That is still something that I'm thinking about, and I'm like keeping a close eye on to see, are these things that could happen in other places? As obviously in the United States here, we've got both government-run prisons and private-run prisons, and that can also complicate and mess up things. But again, thank you for coming on. And what is
Sure.
the Friday the 13th Italy update?
So let me start by I'm starting to consider not coming on next time so that hopefully things don't degenerate and for
You know what? If our show and these Discord calls are actually having those effects, then maybe we need to reconsider some of the things that we're talking about. But I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, so I'm personally doing not too bad given the situation. I cannot really complain since I work remotely, and yeah, I'm doing okay.
Good.
As far as the country goes, yeah, I'm gonna go straight to the updates since it seems like there are a lot of colors today.
Okay.
So this time today there isn't anything particularly new compared to the last two conversations that we had. It's just that everything got, I don't even know, stricter, more strict. Yeah, it's like things have progressed on a severity scale.
So
So
just
just
for well
yeah,
for some context, on Monday there was the initial right. We were talking, and this was during the initial lockdown.
yes,
About 6 to 12 hours after that, the country went into full lockdown.
yeah.
Um,
So wait, I need to interrupt you there
okay.
because the first lockdown actually happened slightly over 2 weeks ago
Right.
in a very selected number of small towns, which were the original sites.
Right.
Then emergency measures were extended, and that's what you were talking about in a big part of northern Italy. And then right after our conversation on Monday, this was extended to the whole country, as you were just saying.
So
yeah,
the last
please
time
go
that
ahead.
we had spoken, the whole country, which was Wednesday, so 2 days ago, the
Yes.
whole country was basically right. Those restrictions had essentially encompassed the whole country now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So and now there are more. Again, there's nothing new as far as restrictions go, but they have become severe. So what I mean by that is that starting from yesterday morning, so about 36 hours ago, something like that, all retail businesses has to be closed except grocery stores, newsstands, tobacco shops, and pharmacies, and that's it. Everything else shut down.
So before that, so Wednesday, if I recall, you had said like bars were allowed to be open at a certain hours. Does that mean that they
Yeah.
are now closed?
Exactly. They were
Okay.
allowed to be open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Only have service at tables, and they were forced to respect the distance of at least 3 feet
Right.
between people. Now they have to be closed. So no bars, no pubs.
Okay.
The only thing that's still allowed is delivery service.
Okay.
And we'll see how that goes. Like that may not last long, given how the rest has
Right,
gone.
right. Well, and one of the things that I remember asking you on Wednesday was sort of the enforcement of things.
Yeah, that's escalated too. I'm gonna get to that.
Okay, okay. I'll let you go. I'll shut up then.
No, it's okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, other things that have been closed are barbers, hairdressers, and stuff like that for personal care. Also there are no religious celebrations, no weddings, no funerals, nothing at all. So all the people that are dying right now, they cannot be celebrated. No way.
That is so very sad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking about this yesterday, and just think about losing someone in this moment right here, and not even be able to grieve them in the way that you would want
Yeah,
to do usually.
yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So yeah, this is pretty much what's been closed that was open when we last talked. And as far as the legal consequences, yeah, I think I have to mention some before I get to that, because there has been an extension to the containment measures to self-quarantine. So if you remember on Wednesday, I told you that we were forbidden to go outside of your own town, your own city, and you could go out just to get to work or for health necessities or just to buy primary needs at a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's still the case, but every time you go outside, even if you have to go or to go do the shopping, you have to have on yourself a self-certification that the police must be able to check on you, stating I'm out because I'm going there to do this.
What
And if you
is
don't have,
what form does that take?
it's an actual form that's provided by.
Sorry, say that one more time. It's a form that what?
It is a form that is being provided by the government, so you can just print it out or copy it with a pen on a piece of paper.
So give me an example of how this would be used. Like maybe if I am a doctor or a nurse, like I would have this form to basically show, no, I'm a doctor and I'm going here, or who else has this form?
So I'm not sure about so I'm not sure about medical professionals.
Okay.
Because that's a whole other thing. So, but say for instance, I need to go out to do some shopping. I should have on my person, on myself, in my pocket, whatever, this piece of paper on which is written, I, Mr. Kaji, born here in this date. I live here, so address where I live. I declare that I'm out of my domicile because I need to go shopping here.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And if you don't have that, the police is authorized have your like you basically have to give them a declaration. Like, you have to testify that you're doing that, and afterwards they have the power to investigate on that. And if you're to have declared false, you risk between 1 and 6 years of prison.
That is, I mean, I understand the need. That is, something I think many of us cannot comprehend. I mean, even as you're telling me this, not that I don't believe you, it is just, it's like, wow, like what would things be like if I had to operate in that way? Or if, I mean, so it's just, it's really kind of a shocking thing to me. It's not shocking because I don't think it's right, just that, that is the level of precaution that Italy has gone to.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is official since yesterday morning. So next time I have to go shopping, I have to remember to have that thing myself.
Wow.
Someone is asking in chat about a timestamp. I do not think so. I don't know, but I mean, if you're going out to do some shopping and you're saying that you're going in a particular place to do that, and you're found somewhere else, there are probably going to be some questions, right? Because okay, why are you here instead of where you were supposed to be going? And
Right.
honestly, I'm not too convinced about the effectiveness of this measure, but I think it's necessary to just hammer it in the population's head that we have to take care. We have to be careful. Because I don't think that actually the police will have the possibility to really investigate through all of these cases. I don't even think that they want to do that, but the fact that they can is a deterrent. And I think that's why this is important.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's already probably a sense of overloading, the police force or whoever else is regulating that. But I can understand, and it seems like a measure that might be better to put in place now, just in case there is a situation,
Absolutely.
right, where things continue to degrade or get worse, and I mean, it. Are you is that kind of most of the updates? Because I have a couple questions if it is.
Not really.
Okay.
There are a couple more things that I want to mention.
Okay.
Let me see. Oh yeah, remember when we were talking about human reactions, human problems?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about that because right now, as here in the United States, as compared to Wednesday, more people are taking action, are reacting. Some were just like pushing it off to the side. So what we talked about in terms of human reaction and that being unpredictable is now really starting to become a part of that narrative in the United States, right? We've seen some of the fights breaking out in grocery stores or the large Costco's, basically like the big warehouse style stores here. And I feel like that is the next phase that we're about to go through.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
So
And,
what from the human reaction and human perspective, what do you have to report?
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to mention is, so as I said just a moment ago, pretty much every kind of has to be closed, has to stay closed.
Right.
But that doesn't apply to factories, to production structures.
Okay.
But at the same time, there has been no actual measure those work environments and to contribute to the safety of factory workers. And so a few hours after this new decree came in action, a bunch of strikes have been announced by metal workers and factory workers, saying that they didn't want to get to work if the state didn't actually sanitize their work environments and granted them good, safe work conditions. And that is a big deal because if retail businesses stop, everything stops and even factories stop, then the whole country's economy is over.
Right. Yeah, that is another interesting perspective, right? Because I think, well, it's human nature to want to feel like you are protected and want to feel like you are not just a cog in the giant wheel of the machine. And I could certainly understand if they're also closing other businesses, et cetera, but then saying, well, no, because of industry or, X, Y, and Z, you need to stay open and you need to report into work. Again, coming back to the human reaction, if you're not being protected, I assume that there's some form of like union scenario if
Yeah.
they're going on strike. So right, like that's kind of the job of the union too, is to be able to protect some of those workers and fight for their rights. So is this this is like a developing story? Definitely people have gone on strike. Have any factories actually shut down? Is there a fear of that, of that happening, or is it already happening?
It is already happening.
Okay.
Yesterday, it wasn't. Yesterday, talked about, and today several unions actually declared strikes for a number of factories. So it is happening, and the government is starting now, today, as of today, is starting to take steps to deal with the situation. But several factories are probably going to be closed for at least a week. So, yeah.
Is that it closed so that they can disinfect, make sure it's safe, test workers?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one last update.
Sure.
Different story before you go with it. This is a sad one. Okay, so yeah, brace yourself. Remember I was talking about the Lombardy region
Yes.
in northern Italy, which is the one that's been hit the hardest by this whole situation. Yesterday, this news came out that in the province of Bergamo, which is a relatively big city in northern Italy, there are, as of yesterday, no more places in mortuaries. So there are no places where to store corpses. They have taken control of churches and other facilities to increase that capacity, but as of yesterday, that's the situation. And crematories have a 5-day queue before a new corpse can be cremated. So that's how bad it's gotten.
When you put that into perspective, where you can't have funerals, the only choice might be cremation, but that also may not be the wishes of someone who has passed away. That is right. Again, this is another one of those ripples that we were talking about, where an event is a rock dropping in the water, and each ripple is sort of the after effects of how it is affecting other things.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to mention it.
Yeah.
It's something that 2 weeks back, could you have thought about this? No, of course not.
Right, because you just it's so hard to visually present speculation and say, oh yes, this will most certainly be a problem, so we must prepare for it. Because the other question is how do you prepare for it? I do recall earlier in the week we talked about, I related it to the infrastructure of expanding Twitch, and how it doesn't always make sense to just say fire up 1,000 servers and let's do it that way. And this is probably exactly one of those one of those types of situations where it's how do you prepare for something that represents a volume that you're not typically dealing with, right?
Yeah.
On a normal day where the world is fine and operating, right? A mortuary, a funeral home, they know what their general influx is. This is something that, is obviously, it has peaks and valleys because things happen. But in this particular case, this is not right. We don't typically have a scenario where hundreds of people or thousands of people in Italy's case, potentially are dying, and what is done about that. That is both incredibly scary and disheartening as well, because I do feel for all the families that, as you mentioned, can't grieve or have closure in some of these deaths, but then also, like I don't even want to begin to speculate, like, what does that mean, right? Like what do they do?
Yeah, let's not go there at all.
Yeah, yeah. That's really, really crazy. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I close my updates.
Well, I mean,
You have some questions, right?
well, you did answer a couple of them, right? Because we had talked
Okay.
about, we talked a little bit about medical resources, and there have been some stories about, and um, some really interesting and fascinating talks from Italian doctors who have basically had to be the ones that picked and choose. Uh, I think about, so there's a movie, Saving Private Ryan, and
Yes.
and there's a scene where Giovanni Ribisi, who is a medic, is kind of like going through all of these injured soldiers, while they're on the beach, and in this scene, they're like, okay, you can bandage that and it'll be good, and okay, give morphine to this one and take care of that wound and cleaned it, and then, oh, this person's way far gone. Like, there's nothing you can do. You just need to leave them there. And he attempts to do something anyway, right? And this is what people are experiencing. Except the problem is that they can't, right? They want to help, but they can't even help. And I think what you've said about the mortuaries and that kind of like, it answers the question that I was going to anyway. It exposes another problem that, again, other countries may need to take a look at, see, and understand how that could ultimately be affecting them. So
Yeah, I think that's a good indicator.
yeah. I guess the one question I have before I let you go, Mr. Kaji, is that a lot of people are still operating, especially here in the United States, and I think you can provide some great context, are operating in okay, yeah, okay, things got bad, but it's all good in a couple weeks. Things will probably be better. We'll be reopening schools. How do you feel, and what is your sort of thoughts on everything that is happening, everything that you've gone through in the last week, 2 weeks? Do people feel like the light at the end of the tunnel can be seen, or do you still feel like, or is the country still feeling like we are in the middle of the tunnel and we can't even see the light yet, right? Like many people say, and an article that came out yesterday talking about the exponential growth that we've seen in the United States, they said we are about 9 days behind Italy. Now, if you actually look at the timelines, it's absolutely correct. We are now starting to institute things here in the U.S. that Italy was thinking about proposing, et cetera, many, many days ago, potentially 1 to 2 weeks ago. What are your thoughts on that, on sort of where we are in this crisis? Do you think, would your advice to other people be like, listen, we are still in the middle of it, so you have to imagine if you've just entered the tunnel, there is a lot of tunnel that you got to go through?
So, reopening schools in 2 weeks? Fuck no, you won't.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, this is not a short tunnel. Not at all. We're still rising here. So one interesting thing to mention in answering the question is, as I said last time, this week was the one where the first effects of the initial containment were expected to be happening. So Italy is expecting some decrease in the infection rates in the original sites by the 15th, by March the 15th, March the 16th. If on that day or in the following couple days, there's a decrease in infection rates in the original sites that were the first ones to undergo containment measures, then that means that we have a timeline and we can actually do some predictions. If that doesn't happen, then who fucking knows? There is no way to know yet.
Interesting.
So yeah, couple weeks, no way. A month, maybe. But
I feel like
maybe
some of
two.
those time frames are presented because at least that is like, hey, you need to do this. And maybe the time frame represents we don't want, right? Because like, what would be worse than closing schools for a couple weeks is closing schools till the end of the year, right? Like that thought alone. So I think, on some level, I do agree with like, let's put a time frame on it, understanding that time frame is not finite, right? Like that is a dynamic time frame in which we will need to make an assessment 1 week, 1.5 weeks from that point, whether or not that will extend. If everyone just said schools are done like until the end of the semester here, that would probably cause more of a panic. So you are right. I completely agree with you. But I do kind of feel like for those that are just kind of like joining us in the world and what is happening, that is a necessary step. But I agree with you. We cannot just assume that because we've decided 2 weeks is the number, that on that date, everything's going to be fine, right? As you and I have both agreed on, like only time is going to help us better understand what the next 1 week, 2 week, month, 3 months, 6 months is going to look like. And that is so hard to look into, the future and make those assumptions also without causing more distress and panic along the way.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind,
yes.
I see a question in chat, and that actually relates to something that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Like, can I be the one to ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So the question in chat is, are tests free in Italy? The answer is yes. And so my question is, I'm gonna give you a little bit of context. So Italy has a social healthcare system.
Right.
So basically the way it works is if you have to access a medical service, you pay an access fee, so a ticket, which is, in my personal experience, it's always ranged between 25 and 70 euros, so like 30 to 80 bucks. And that's it. Like, to give you an example, in the last few years, I had an issue with my shoulder. I had to undergo several examinations, a little surgery, and the whole thing cost me not more than 400 euros, which is not a lot at all.
Sure.
Plus, if you get hospitalized, if you're hospitalized, and you just do not pay, you not have to pay anything.
Okay.
And this relates to this situation here, where this is an emergency situation. So all the people that are being hospitalized right now, that have to go into intensive care units, and all the people that have to undergo testing, all that is paid by the state. These people have to pay zero.
Yeah.
Nothing. And so I'm wondering, I'm no expert in regard to the US healthcare system. All I know is that insurance is a thing, and that's it. I don't really know the details. And I'm really wondering, and this is what I'm asking you, but given that you probably cannot give me a complete answer, a detailed answer, because this is something new, right? This has not happened yet. So you don't have data to prove this on. But
right.
What do you think that this situation could be like in the U.S. healthcare system? And I know that I'm probably opening Pandora's box here.
No,
So
actually, it's a timely question, and it's a great question. So I'm going to answer it. I'm going to go ahead and let you go, but I'll answer it
Sure.
off on air.
Great,
So
thank you.
yeah, I'm gonna answer that in just a second. But Mr. Kaji, thank you so much for calling again.
Thank you
We'll
for
be
having me.
checking in. I'll be checking on you, but stay safe, stay healthy,
Feel
and
free.
again, thank you for all of your insight and sharing your stories and experiences. I really appreciate it. So,
Thank you for
all
what
right.
you're doing, man.
Yep. Thanks, man.
Keep
Appreciate
up the
it.
good
Take care.
work.
Thank you, buddy.
Take care.
So, yeah, to answer Mr. Kaji's question, something happened yesterday that is of significant importance here in the United States, and that is the fact that there is essentially a regulation under the CDC that says in a state of emergency, the director of the CDC can essentially make a declaration that says, because we're in a state of emergency, people are going to get their testing paid for. Prior to that, it was a big question, right? Insurance companies were communicating with people who were insured. But the fact of the matter is that there's many people that don't have insurance or have a limited type of insurance. Yesterday, and we're still going to have to see how this plays out, but yesterday, the director of the CDC did say that they plan to allow people to get free testing. Now, treatment, that still remains to be seen, because like a single visit might be covered, but if you are admitted into the hospital, what will that mean? How will that play out? So this is a big step for the United States, and it is a big topic of discussion. We don't have all of the details on it. However, it is comforting to many individuals in the United States, many U.S. citizens, to know that the CDC can take this action to make these things free. They're working with the insurance companies to understand how to accomplish this. They're working with medical facilities and staff, et cetera. And, I don't know that we'll have those full answers in the immediate future, because we still have one underlying problem, and that is that we don't have enough tests. So while they may waive the fees for someone to get tests, the question still remains is, does your medical establishment, does your doctor, physician, et cetera, have access to tests? So it's kind of like it's stair-stepping a problem where on one hand, sure, great, tests don't cost you anything. The other problem is running in parallel is like, are there even enough tests? So we've seen some progress in this area, but at the same time, it is unclear, right, how that is going to affect things overall. So we'll continue to kind of look into that, and I will report. But I will say, Mr. Kaji, that is a big concern here in the United States. Especially when you're talking about someone who might be considered, a low-income family, someone who, again, maybe has limited insurance or doesn't have insurance, because they have rights to their health and getting tested too. So while we have good news, we still have to have the tests to keep up with that. So that's kind of where we're sitting. So our next caller is Ma. Let me make sure. Yeah. And then Enlarged Bread. I really appreciate everyone for being patient. We're going to try to get to everyone's call. If I ask for the call to be a little bit shorter as a result of that, it's just because I want to get as many voices heard as possible. So let me bring Ma on next. And yeah, a lot of tests are being denied, and that's the problem. Again, like, you could say like, yeah, everyone gets a free car, but we only have 4 cars, right? Like that, great, everyone gets a free car, but there's like a limited quality or quantity of cars, right? You can see where the problem is there, and it's very similar in the United States with number of tests versus like now you can get a free test. So let's bring Ma on next. Ma, hello, welcome to the program. Hello. How's it going?
I'm doing good, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing, kind of as good as I can.
Yeah.
As good as I can. So remind us, you did call in earlier this week. Remind us where you're
Right.
calling from.
Yeah, I'm from Germany. Last time I didn't do a very good job to explain where exactly. It's a little north of Cologne. That should be pretty clear, I guess.
Great. How are things in Germany?
Yeah, they are rapidly evolving, I'd say. A lot of things happened just today, I'd say.
Yeah.
So, for example, yesterday our school ministry basically said it wouldn't make much sense to close schools.
It would
because,
not make sense.
Yes, that would not make sense because children don't get sick. Yeah. Totally ignoring that they're spreading it.
Right. And there's also the kids might, right? We don't know the full extent of things, but what we are learning is that based off of the statistics, kids tend to, whatever, their bodies are like, you stupid virus, I can handle you. But there's also teachers, there's administration. If there are no teachers, who's going to be teaching the kids? Do you think that's a problem?
So the thing is, luckily we have a couple very active epidemiologists that pretty much immediately went out and said that it's stupid and that right now it's probably already current cases times 10. That's more realistic that we actually have. So
Right.
about half of the country has announced to close schools now, but not everywhere.
Oh, so if the government says no, we're not going to close schools, does that mean the schools are making this decision, despite what the government is saying?
Sorry. Kind of.
Okay.
They are discussing. So we have very split governments, more or less. So we have the Bundesregierung, which is for the entirety of Germany.
Okay.
And then we have each little state compared to what you have in America. They are tiny.
Right.
That has an own government, and they have pretty much a government for everything as well, for schools, for health, etc. And they can make that call, and they are doing that call.
Okay, I got you. What are your feelings on that? Do you think that the government should close the schools?
Oh, in my opinion, they should have closed them 2 weeks ago. So,
Okay.
And that's the sentiment of some I've talked to today as well.
Okay.
Feels like now that more and more areas are closing schools, it gets real for more people. Like you said earlier today.
Because it directly affects them. Right. Or
Right.
maybe it doesn't,
Right.
but it's still it's one of those thoughts where you're just like, wow, here in the United States, we close schools because it snowed a lot and it's not safe.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Right. That is historically when they close
Right.
schools. I can't really think of any other time in my lifetime where school has been closed because of something that hasn't been weather related. So the thought
same
of
here.
something like this, like a pandemic closing schools is like, it's a slap in the face to a lot of folks.
Yeah. So the problem with closing schools as well is that in Germany we have in such situations when a school closed, one of the parents can take off work and still get paid. So
That's good.
they can take care of it, yeah. But that also means that pretty much a lot of workers are out of business. And it'll slow down a lot, I think. Which is good.
You mean the spread would slow down?
The spread and the daily life that's still present.
Right.
Because, yeah.
Right. I was just taking a look at cases. Right now, Germany is actually one of the top 10 countries with reported
Right.
cases. Thankfully, it seems like at least what is reported from a death perspective, the country still remains pretty low. But the question is as Germany continues to rise in cases, how are you kind of feeling about things? I mean, obviously, you've kind of explained, the government sounds like they're taking steps, but maybe not full
Yes.
steps. How do you kind of see Germany looking in the next week or so?
So first of all, I think um, our data is kind of good, but again, epidemiologists say you should take that number of cases by 10, roughly.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I feel like we are still not doing good enough job of testing. We have the capacity for around 12,000 tests per day, as far as I know.
That's
But
amazing, actually.
yeah,
That is I wish that we could do 12,000 tests a day.
yeah. But I'm not entirely sure we are actually at capacity, right?
Hmm.
I don't think so. Our CDC, the Robert Koch Institute, they set out criteria you have to meet to get a test. And those criteria are 14 days. In the last 14 days, you have to have contact with a known patient or been to an area at risk. So Iran, Italy, parts
Right.
of France, China.
That is very similar to how things have been approached here in the United States. Unfortunately, I think that the fallacy in that is that if we have community spread and you don't, you aren't linked to one of the, outbreak states or outbreak countries, if you don't have travel, that makes it harder to get a test. But I don't believe that should make it any different for needing a test, right? Like, it's mind blowing to
Exactly.
me that symptoms alone, and I realize that a lot of people, because of what's happening in the news, might have flu, might just have flu A, or might,
Yeah.
maybe be experiencing something similar. But like, it seems like that is a way to exacerbate the problem, to
Yeah.
make things worse by potentially pushing, people away, not giving them the test, and them potentially thinking they're okay, spreading it more.
Yeah.
And I think like the whole world is still trying to figure that part out. I
Except
mean,
South Korea.
yeah. I mean, except for South Korea has been incredibly, and I mean, even with their aggressive testing, they still have a fair number of cases every day, but they're not
Sure.
advancing as quickly as other countries who have similar numbers of cases. Yeah, so
Right.
it's fascinating. I do say congratulations to you guys for having 12,000 tests a day, though, because that's like where people need to be, right? We need to be doing an incredibly large volume of testing in order to
So yeah, the thing is, I
get this.
don't exactly know if we are running 12,000 tests a day yet, but we can.
Yeah, right.
I would also like to know in which way South Korea decides where to do those tests, to be honest.
Well,
Because I think. Yeah, go ahead.
someone just tweeted, it looks like another news conference today. This is from our president, another news conference today at 3 p.m. Who, of course, he doesn't list the time zone. So who knows when the fuck that is.
Yeah.
Topic coronavirus. So sorry. So what's interesting
problem.
about South Korea is they were one of the first countries, as far as I know, to institute drive-through testing. So they
Right.
had a capacity and I think an understanding for, why you should get tested, or, when you should go through and visit one of these. But because they made it readily available, people were able to identify,
Yeah.
take action. that has been one of the reasons why they have been able to do so many tests, because of their method of testing as well.
Sure, but I mean, you don't really want to have a lot of people just going there with regular flu, right?
You don't, but right, like they,
Yeah, I know.
this to me, I find the South Korean testing thing really fascinating, because
Same.
why aren't we just saying, cool, can you give us the instruction booklet for how you're accomplishing all this shit? Because like
Yeah,
we could
exactly.
really use that. And I don't think South Korea is like hoarding this information. I just think, like this has been one of the most asked questions amongst like the journalists to some of the medical community here in the United States. It's like, hey, this is what we're hearing. This is what we understand about how South Korea is aggressively attacking this from a testing perspective. Why are we not considering this, or why aren't we looking at their playbook and figuring out how we might be able to adopt some of their practices? This is unclear to me. This is an answer that I don't have, but a question that continues to haunt me a little bit, because it has been clear that when you look at the data, especially mapped out on a graph, and you know the amount of testing that South Korea is doing, their spread seems to be
Right.
very minimal. Now,
Yeah.
that's one of those things. Maybe it's my gamer brain trying to figure it out, right? I'm like trying to min-max the situation, but I feel like South Korea is min-maxing right now. We could
Definitely.
learn from that. And if I want to make the best build for Path of Exile, I go look at other people who are really good at min-maxing, and I learn from that, right? Like
Right.
it's one of those things that, and for us, I do think that this has a lot to do with the CDC, their response, their plans, some of our infrastructure. So
Same here.
obviously every country is going to be a little bit different, but you pose a question that has rattled in my brain for at least 2 weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, that's what really annoys me about the whole situation. I mean, we have so many countries to look at, how it's developing, and especially China, what they've been doing. And then it gets here and everyone is like, oh, we live our normal lives. Just a flu.
Yeah. Someone in chat said it's about the necessary chemicals and machines and coordination. And you know what? That right, like if that's accurate, that's information that I don't feel like is freely shared, right? That would be great to hear an explanation, whether that's from the CDC or whether that's from the government officials in other countries, but no one's saying what you just said, right? Or what this person in chat, very big brain, appropriate username, said. Right? Maybe it is because they have a higher density or access to the chemicals needed for the tests and all the machines and their process and method. But again, like if we're not learning about that and figuring that out and sort of formulating a plan around that, then we're going to be a few steps behind is kind of how I see that.
So as far as I know, South Korea also did 10K tests. Like they went out of their way to test people. Yeah, so proactively, instead of waiting for people to come to them with symptoms or anything.
Right. Rigid designator, I'll take a look at that link. Thank you for sharing the links to why are Korean COVID-19 death rates so low, and I hope that also answers like why their spread has been minimal. So, well, Ma, I've still got a few callers to get through. I've got just about an hour left to go on the show, but I really do thank you for calling in and appreciate you sharing your perspectives.
Yeah. Have a good one. Ciao.
Yep. Take care. Be safe. Our next up is Enlarged Bread. And Enlarged Bread is going to be joining us. And then I believe Nightlight, The Bacon from Hell, and Gay Vulture. So we're going to try to get to everyone. We might try to rapid fire through some of these calls, but I know a lot of you have been waiting for quite a long time. I really appreciate your patience. let's bring on Enlarged Bread next. And Enlarged Bread, welcome to the show. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Okay, maybe a lot. So, I apologize if there's the guy that made the Twitter fighting. We're not dealing with that right now. Honest Geo, we've got sort of other things that we're dealing with right now. So, if he didn't mean it, then he probably shouldn't have said it. But Enlarged Bread, let's try this again. Hello, how you doing? Are you there?
Hey, how's it going? Let me mute the stream. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. No
Cool,
problem.
Cool. Hey, how's
It's going as good as it can. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm in Washington, kind of the heat of things.
Okay.
I travel a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Washington, but Pierce County, King County, where Seattle is, and then Snohomish County are sort of the big three that have been affected. And I have to travel all through that for work. So I just got back home, but I've basically been running through Seattle and Everett, and kind of worried a little bit, but you know.
Yeah, that's just the nature of your work, that you're kind of traveling around that region, and I could certainly understand why, there's cause for concern. I think King County was kind of recognized and sort of the first place where, we had a lot of issues here in the United States. But yeah, I'd love to hear kind of the perspective. I know that Seattle schools have closed. I know there's been maybe a little bit more lockdown than we've seen in other states right now. But what's the state of things right now?
Sure. So it's actually really funny. The person talking about South Korea. I just looked up for the University of Washington. They just got up to doing 1,800 tests in a day. And I think their goal is to shoot for 5,000. And then when you hear like South Korea doing double that, and the reality is South Korea is only half the size of Washington. That really puts things in perspective. For the governments, they're happy only doing 200 tests a day, and that's all they can afford to do, according to the Department of Health. So really, it's actually been a lot on the University of Washington to have rolling mobile test sites to kind of do this kind of thing. So it's really interesting, like the perspective of a U.S. state versus other countries and our rollout versus theirs.
Right. Yeah, that's and it is a good point, right? We are seeing more information shared. We are seeing more techniques shared. We obviously are at the mercy of our own state governments, but also the federal government as well. And I know that it is similar to sort of other countries, and it's much different than other countries as well. But it is good. Like that to me is a positive thing to hear. Right. Like, I mean, certainly 5,000 is a lot more than 1,800. And I think one of the problems that we've been dealing with as a country and even on a state level is that, some of people who haven't been taking it seriously are just looking at the numbers that are on the table, but they're not looking behind the curtain, which is the reason why some of the numbers are so low, are just frankly due to the lack of testing, right, that has been done. That's hard for people to grasp, and I understand that. But yeah, I'm appreciative that we've got so many different agencies that are working to try to resolve that problem.
Yeah, and I guess for me it's like I don't want to be on the panic side of it, but Washington, we've had a lot of kind of panics in the last year. Last year, Clark County down to the south of Seattle had a lot of measles outbreaks. I don't know if you saw that in the news, but it was pretty amazing. I actually had to go down to work to teach a class down there. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going into a place where like measles is still happening. And so I kind of like, I understand it's like there's a lot of reasons we don't have tests now, but for me, and especially the kind of work I do, it's like thinking about what do we need to do next time for prevention? Why are we having a measles outbreak and then a year later, a new virus outbreak? even during the winter, we had something called Snowmageddon in Washington State on the west side, where like everyone bought out all the bread and Gatorade. You couldn't go to a store and buy a pack of bread. Like that's how like our prevention side of dealing with stuff hasn't been very strong, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. When I was so we made a late night. We called, we've been preparing for a while, but we thought, one thing that we need to probably have more of is like canned goods. So we decided to make a late night canned good run last night to our local grocery store. Admittedly, it was way busier than I would have expected at 11 o'clock at night. But the individual who was checking out at the register, I asked him, I'm like, when was the last time you saw this that busy? And he said the last time that we saw this place this busy was in 1993 when we had this enormously large shut-in snowstorm that, people were well aware of it. It was going to happen and things got cleared out. But just to show how something can have that type of effect, like it is pretty incredible. So
yeah, and the other thing I kind of want to do, because like I said, I don't want to take up all the time. Like you're talking about schools, Pierce County came out last night saying they were going to shut down until April 24th, which is actually that's like a month and a half. But I think the reality of it is like this thing, because I work in education. I have a master's in education. Taking a month and a half off of school, and I don't know if in Nebraska where you're at, if it's short or anything, that's not really that big of a deal. Schools can move around dates in summer, and they can take shorter summer breaks and that sort of thing. That really taking a time off is not going to be that big as long as your kids are getting some sort of education. There's so many different resources out there. I mean, even Khan Academy, just spending time a day, your kids just trying to learn something new, like appropriate to their grade level, is something that kind of keep them informed while we get through this.
So can I ask you, because this is a topic I love, right? I'm heavily invested in my son's education. We lived in San Francisco for 4 years where we homeschooled because we were not happy with the public education system out there. Can I just ask, do you have kids?
No.
Okay.
There's a reason why.
Okay, but you it sounds like you teach and maybe you have a background in education. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I've taught high school for a couple of years. I
Okay.
switched into corporate training because I like teaching adults a little bit more, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, sure. So, like my perspective on this is like 100% I agree, because I've learned as a parent, especially raising a kid in a homeschool environment for the last 4 years, that I can supplement education in a really amazing way. And I love that, right? I do think that some of the problems that we run into are less about, and thank you, djHF.TV for the sub, but some of the problems that we run into are if parents have to be home working and they have to focus on their full-time job, but also raising their child is at home is also, like, let's be real, it's kind of like a full-time job. Like, do you actually have confidence in parents to step up and take that initiative? Because in my experience, I feel like that is a very, very, very low believe it or not, it's kind of a scary thing, but I think it is a low percentage of people that either A, understand how to apply this supplemental education, how to enforce this supplemental education, and the harsh reality of it, like, lives in a home where that supplemental education can happen, right? Like, we have areas of our city, as I'm sure that every state does in the United States, where the fact of the matter is like there's probably homes that don't have computers. That don't have the same level of access to this type of information, and education. So while I agree with you and I am like pro thumbs up, I do believe that there is still a percentage of parents, of students, of organizations and establishments in the United States that simply don't have access to that. right? Like I'm fine if school goes into the summer, that's great. I mean, one interesting thing that we are dealing with is the high school that my son is supposed to go to next year is literally being built. Right now, they are finishing it up, right? Is this going to have effect on that school opening? And then will it, will he potentially have to go to a different school as a temporary until that school opens? If that happens, how will that transition period go? So like, I am so on board with what you are saying. And I do agree. Like, I don't want people to panic because there's a lot of ways. Like, it's a great time to, get your kid to learn how to code or to read up on something or find out what an interest is and have them spend even an hour a day doing it. But we do have to recognize the fact that there are a lot of kids in this status quo that do not have access to that same level of resources that others do. And so regardless of whether or not a large percentage can handle it, I think the real question, unfortunately, he left, but I wanted to hear his thoughts on it. Unfortunately, I'm worried about the percentage that can introduce an education gap. That's the part that I am really worried about. So I agree, though, with enlarged bread. Educate your. You're welcome to join back up. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Yeah, you're sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. But did you at least hear kind of what I was saying and have any thoughts about that in terms of? Okay, let me try again. Are you there? This was happening to someone else earlier. All right, well, I'll try one more time. Enlarged bread, you there? Shoot. Dude, I really wanted to hear. I mean, we should be getting, the wheat and the bread. We should be one, right? I'm going to try one more time. I really like this educational perspective on it, and I want to hear. I'm not forcing Push to talk, no. Enlarged bread.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, I do.
Switched over to a different mic. I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Anyway, so I caught most of it. So like I agree with you because like one thing is like when a kid walks into the classroom, like what is their background? Did they come from an abusive home? Do they, is there like even their electric bill being paid, let alone having a computer, right? There's all those variables.
That's fair, yeah.
All those things. And that's why, like, when I say this and I say, like, hey, if even you, like, with your kid can just do 1 hour, like, I don't think people need to go into that panic of, oh, I have to go turn to homeschooling. Because like I said, is like, hopefully for like a lot of our school districts, they're not just going to say, hey, this is a time off, kids shouldn't learn. It's, hey, have your kids learn just like part-time, like, if you can with your kids, sit down with them and like, hey, you've had all day while I was at work, but if you can just spend an hour learning this or doing something that might be appropriate. Like one of the great things now with technology is if your kids do have it, maybe your teachers can email you, hey, this is the kind of stuff we wanted to cover. And then maybe the parents, hey, you can cover this for like an hour. Like don't spend 8 hours. We're not telling you to quit your jobs, but do that. And then maybe they'll add on a month to in summer, like I said. So it's nothing is perfect, right? We're not looking for the, hey, let's get our kids back to where they were before schools were closed. Right. That's not possible. Even in Washington State, like they're trying to, instead of schools, they're having places where kids can go get breakfasts, right? Just so they can have a meal, because for a lot of low income kids who require that, like they wouldn't get food because their parents can't afford food. So it's even having those types of programs open just to have something in place while we're dealing with this, right? So it's not, hey, how should we freak out? It's like, oh, what are the things we need to do? What kind of preventative measures do we need to take so we can deal with this kind of situation?
I totally agree, and I appreciate and like this perspective. It's something that I'm personally invested in, not only because of my son, but also just because I do worry about some of the less fortunate that may not have access to that. But I appreciate you calling in. I think this is a topic that we're going to probably continue to discuss because I am talking to a lot of parents that are dealing with a few things, in terms of like how to best do that, right? Like I would love to share my strategies that I've used over the last 4 years, and hopefully that will help someone figure out like really effective ways that they could just do exactly like what you're saying, like spend a little time, or like, hey, while I'm gone, I'd love for you to watch this extra credits history video, and then when I get home for dinner, we'll talk about it, right? Like anything like that, anything to keep those brain cells firing off, I think are going to be good. But thank you again for your call, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care.
You too.
All right, we've got Nightlight up next, and I'm gonna try to speed some of these up a little bit. Mini Wheat loves extra credits history, so that was like a personal thing. Like he's taught me so much. He'll watch it at the dinner table occasionally, and like then the whole family starts watching it, and like there's just a lot of fantastic resources out there. But Nightlight, thank you for waiting and being so patient down in the phones. How are you doing?
No problem. I'm doing well so far.
Nightlight, where are you from?
I'm from Norway,
Norway. So,
and my name is Danny.
Danny, good to meet you, Danny. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I've written down some things just in case. I can start with how Norway reacted in the beginning when it first was announced about coronavirus and stuff like that. In the beginning, many in Norway, like you said earlier, people don't take it seriously, saying, nah, how would it come to Norway? It's not going to be a big thing. But of course, slow and steady, it's risen, and now we are up in 894 confirmed sick.
Right.
And we had our first death rate today, or was it yesterday? At least.
Yeah, within the last couple days, according to what I'm looking at right now.
And in the beginning, like even at my work, people were saying, it's nothing to care about. It's just hysteria. It's just the news trying to get clicks. Even coworkers at my job said, like, I hope I can get it because they can get free from work and I can just chill at home with payments. It's insane. So people weren't taking it seriously. And of course, now in Norway, most food shops have no food, bread or meat or vegetables. It's all empty. And of course, toilet papers.
Yeah.
So there's a huge panic now. The government has went out saying that just take what you need, not anymore. People are trying to flee to their huts, which the government is saying, no, stay home, because don't travel, just stay home if you think you have it or someone you know have it. Like even my family were planning to go to Vietnam for a vacation, and I told them that, no, you shouldn't go, cancel it before it's too late. And now it's too late. They cancelled it, and they lost approximately 1,295 euros out, just gone, because they didn't pay for the insurance. So that sucks. And also, my stepmother's grandmother got home from Vietnam just a week ago, and no clue if she's got it. And she's been spending time with my family.
Yeah, Vietnam was also interesting because they were reported at one case. And then actually, so at one point on the site that I use, the World Meters, like Mako's a great example. They've reported 10 cases, but all of those 10 have recovered with no new cases. So they like highlight it with a green. And for the longest time, Vietnam was actually very low reported, and everyone who was reported had recovered. But now they are up to 44, haven't necessarily had hadn't had any deaths. They've had plenty recovering, but they've now, had new cases. So it's one of those things that's just, again, like looking at those numbers, it's hard to, just sit there and be like, well, we only have one case, because we've seen situations where that one case has potentially gone away, but then come back due to, right, the rest of the world also, and people that are traveling, and the fact that we are globally connected through travel, through the fact that we are one giant planet of a melting pot as well. So it's just very, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's like, and now the government's gone out saying to everyone that take care. Everyone in Norway has received a SMS on their phone saying that stay clean, think about your family, and don't panic.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. But the problem is that still people are panicking. Like my girlfriend was just going to buy some groceries and the shops were full of people, and she got a panic attack almost, because she wasn't afraid of the virus itself. She was afraid of the humans. Like, you don't know what people will do.
Yeah, the human reaction is something that we all really need to, right? Like, it's natural, right? It is completely natural for us as humans to assess a situation and react accordingly. The thing is that when you're in a situation that you are unfamiliar with, you cannot predict how people are going to react, and not, how you might react, or you might be able to handle how you're going to react or the effect it might have on you. But I think the scarier part is that person over there, I don't know how they're going to react. This is one thing that scares the shit out of me being in the United States. We talked about this Wednesday. I'm not a gun owner. I'm not a huge fan of guns, but that doesn't mean there aren't a fuckload of other people who carry sidearms around and will, pull those out. Right. And look, that's where I don't want to fearmonger. I don't want that to happen. But like, the state of our union as it relates to guns, and this is a whole nother day-long conversation, but like, that doesn't make me any more comfortable about this situation that's happening right now. This is one of those things that I really do hope that I'm laughing about. Like, you are really paranoid about that gun thing and nothing ever happened. Great. Yeah. That's what I want, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be scared shitless.
No, luckily in Norway, there's like heavy gun restrictions, so very few people have any. Like, I still have airsoft guns. Of course, it won't do much, but I have it ready just in case.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't know how anyone else is going to react. And now it was announced that our king is in quarantine. So we don't know if he's sick, but at least he's being held away from the public because he's very old. So if he gets it, he's finished.
Right. Yeah.
And also they made a new law which allows the government to enter any homes they want if there's suspicion of someone being sick and not reporting that they are sick.
So this has been a topic that I've seen pop up occasionally, because after 9/11 here in the United States, Homeland Security, right, there was a lot of different declarations that were made that essentially kind of equated to a lot of people as like a free pass to just break your human rights and your civil liberties and to do that. But that's because it's for the protection of the company or the country. So, you could argue that either way. It definitely caused some problems here in the United States. But for what you're talking about is generally that being, is that something that's being respected, or are people like, whoa, like, that's not what we're all about? So where do you kind of stand on that?
I get where they're coming from. I just hope it won't be used for bad. Like, you just see China videos from there where people just barge in and rip people out of their houses.
Right.
Because that's worst case scenario. I doubt it will happen in Norway, but you never know.
Yeah. Okay. That's something that I will want to keep a close eye on, because this is exactly the type of scenario that would let governments enact things like that. I mean, even Mr. Kaji was talking about, oh, you've got to print out this form and carry it around, even if you're going grocery shopping. Like, you know, I understand that there are safety measures that are important that can like actually benefit the things like, you know, things keep spreading, et cetera. But, you know, with like the Homeland Security situation, it was like, okay, when is too far, and when is it not? You're exercising for the safety, but you're exercising because it's convenient for you, and it, you know, does violate someone's rights or privacy, et cetera. So I do hope that that turns out being a positive thing and not necessarily something that turns into a problem, because that's how you create wider gaps between your citizens and your governments, et cetera. And I know that we're all different and we all have different types of governments and philosophies, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you know, there's like some similar narratives that we've seen happen all around the world. Like you mentioned, things happening in China and things that have happened here in the United States. So I hope that that remains a civil thing.
Yeah, because it reminds me a bit of the game called Frostpunk, where you can make laws. You don't need to use it, but you made a law there. So if you need to use it, you know, if you play that game, it can go to shitter very fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, now Norway's made trying to make it so for families that have children that's home from school, they can stay home with the children and still get payments for it. Anyway.
And I commend that. I think that's really great. I know every country can't necessarily do that. So, you know, well, my question to you is that does Norway have a work from home or remote culture at all? Like, is that something that there are quite a few people that do that? I'm finding in the United States that there are a lot of remote workers. There are a lot of people that work from home, and there's a lot of people who are capable of working from home. But is that common in Norway?
It's not common at all. It's
Okay.
very looked down upon. It's looked upon as lazy, because at least it's always been like this. I do have a couple of friends now that have received from their higher ups that okay, everyone can now work from home if the job is like that. But if you work in the daily shops with groceries and things like that, of course, it's not possible.
Yeah, of course,
so-
right? Like, I mean, my job is mostly working with creators online, so I happen to have a job where I can work from home, and oftentimes, you know, like I have to work against their time schedule, right? Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have, you know, calls with creators either super early in the morning or super late at night because their workday, they, you know, are maybe streaming. So I certainly understand how that works. But before I let you go, because I do want to try to get everyone in who is attempted to call in today. What do you kind of see? You know, Norway, it looks like potentially about to hit 1,000 cases. What are kind of your predictions? We've seen many other countries in your regions that have already taken some pretty severe action. Do you have any insight or speculation as to what you might see kind of happening in Norway as this continues on?
I said about 1 week ago to my friends and family that I predicted that in 1 week we will at least double how many is reported sick. And of course, now, almost a week later, we're up in 800. So I'm predicting it's going to double again next week, most likely.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's exactly what we've seen in the U.S. and in other countries too. So.
Also, it's been reported that we don't have enough resources to check everyone as well if they have it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, I just promised the guy that was in the chat earlier, the Bacon from Hell. He wanted me to tell you this. Check if you have pneumonia. Hold your breath for 10 seconds. If your cough is similar, check yourself.
Interesting. He's been doing a great job posting a lot of info, and channel that I have set up on my Discord. It's just Corona-19 info, and it's not necessarily a discussion channel. You can do that in other places, but it's a place where you can find information if you're learning about where, when I read something and I think it's good, I've been sharing it. But he has been a soldier. He has been providing so much feedback and so many different really interesting informational takes on things. So again, thank you. I know that he was here earlier and we didn't get a chance to talk to
Yeah,
him.
it was so tired.
I feel bad. I'm gonna make sure that on Monday when we chat that I prioritize Bacon, because again he's been doing a great job. So thanks for passing along that message, Nightlight.
No problem.
Okay, well, stay safe, stay healthy, and we're gonna continue to be checking in. And I thank you for sharing your experiences and your story with us.
No problem.
All right,
Take
be
care.
safe. Bye-bye. All right, Gay Vulture is going to come on. Then we've got Dewey and Very Big Brain. We're going to get to everyone. We've got under 30 minutes to do it, okay? So we're going to make these kind of quick. And we're first bringing in Gay Vulture. He said he is from the UK and wanted to quickly share some of his thoughts. So, Gay Vulture, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing
yeah,
good.
This is Gay Vulture.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going all right. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly. I don't really have a lot of information on ground level or really a lot of stats because I don't check social media every single day.
Sure.
But I'll tell you how it's going in the UK. So far, so just another clarification. I live on the east coast of England, and apparently our county has the least number of cases. And where I live, there's not really been anything in the local news that anyone's got it. Sorry about that.
No problem.
What I want to talk about is the Prime Minister recently said, but for a couple of weeks, they've been talking about what they're going to do. And so far, the Prime Minister has basically said, just carry on as you are. Remember to wash your hands and sing the Happy Birthday song. And then recently he said that basically any of your loved ones, your days are numbered because we're not going to do anything.
How does that not result in incredible amounts of panic, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of folks from the UK who have expressed concern over the way that people have been looking at it and handling it, and then posting videos of here's how folks in the UK are taking this seriously, and they're out and they're partying and they're in the pubs, and and I'm not suggesting what the hell, stop your life and do it, but it does seem like there are an increased amount of people who are concerned that many of the citizens are really not taking it seriously at all.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I don't really. I'm kind of self-contained myself because my life doesn't. I don't really need to go out a lot because I look after a family member at my home. So a lot of times I'm mostly in my little town. But when I've went outside, I've noticed that a lot of people don't wash their hands very often. A lot of people aren't really concerned about it. There is a lot of huge gatherings in areas. But what's so funny about the government as well is that they said that about the football situation, because obviously we have a lot of football going on here.
Right.
And they said that they have no concerns to ban football. And they said, one of them said that you're more likely to get the virus from a more contained area, like a pub, than you are in a big crowded area like a football stadium, which I don't understand how that makes any sense.
That makes no sense to me, considering that people are going to go to the bathrooms, people are going to touch shit. You're serving food there. It's like you're freaking 13 seats in, and they're like, yeah, give me a beer. And people are passing you a beer. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a little short-sighted to me.
And they haven't talked about closing schools at all. Basically they've really done nothing other than just wash your hands and the only thing they said was if you do have like a cold or any kind of cough, you have to self-contain yourself for 7 days. But at the same time, that's not really like although that is what they said. I'm certain there's probably so many jobs out there where people cannot just self-contain for 7 days, and also maybe even their managers could be, question if they should be taking days off, that kind of thing.
Right.
So there's no real it's not really a push for like, this is what has to be done with the government. We're gonna, with the Tory government. There's no. It's really is like. I mean, what I'll say is, I don't mean to sound morbid or like come off as cynical, but living in the UK, what I've experienced is that nothing ever really happens until something bad happens. So this is going to sound a little bit morbid, but they don't really seem to care about the old people who are dying right now. But I think when the first child passes from it, I think that's when they'll actually do something, which is a very horrible way to look at it. But that is just kind of the way our government and the country as a whole kind of treats things.
Right.
Like we don't get things sorted until something really bad happens.
Yeah.
Which is not the same reaction other countries are having right now.
Well, I'd really be like, I think the next few days for the UK, considering again, like I'm basing this off of, this is a data speculation, but based off of the data and some of the rise that I've seen, the UK is reporting many more cases at their level than other countries are. And this is also that spot where like it has the potential to just double up. And so I will be curious to whether it's talking to you or someone else from the UK next week to see how much that has changed and if the country is kind of pivoted in their sentiment towards what is happening right now. But yeah, that's I hope for your sake you're staying safe and staying healthy, and I do feel that like a certain level of nonchalant attitude can lead to worse things. But I hope for the country's sake that it doesn't come down to that, oh, this is bad, oh, this is real bad, and now you're fighting from behind. So
yeah.
All right. Well, maybe you'll join us next week to give us
Yeah.
an update. I do appreciate you calling in and sharing your thoughts with us.
Well, thanks for having me on, and take care.
All right. Take care, Gabe Ultra. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye. All right, we're going to bring Dewey on next. He says, I'm from Vietnam, currently a university student, and well, let me bring him on. So Dewey's from Vietnam. What I say on the stream will be my own perspective as a lazy bum college guy who got information about the epidemic through official Vietnam news channel, as well as the information shared by my family. With that said, welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
having me here.
So, what is your perspective about the information you got? What has happened in Vietnam, and sort of your outlook on things right now?
So, well, the current outlooks on things is that I think for the most part, things are in control at the moment. There are people who are worried, and there are also people panic buying stuff, but generally people know what to do. They stay at home, they don't go out very often, taking precautious measures.
Okay. That's great. That is great, because the opposite is bad. So I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm happy about that too.
How about
our government?
You mentioned university. So
Yes.
Are you still attending classes? Are you doing things online? Is there any concern there?
Well, let's talk. I want to talk back a little bit about before the all of this.
Okay.
Is that we have a Lunar New Year vacation. Well, we have a Lunar New Year vacation, which is Vietnamese celebrating a new year, and that was back in January. And I went from university to home for vacation on 13th of January, and ever since then I have been taking, quote unquote vacation until now. Class hasn't resumed,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm
Okay.
still staying at home right now.
Wow. I mean, have they talked about doing things digitally? That's a big discussion that's happening over here in the United States. That's why I'm asking. Or
Yeah,
do
yeah.
you have any idea when things might resume?
So our university does provide some people with the options to study online if they want to, but some students might say that they don't like going to school online because
Right.
it's kind of cut off the purpose of being at a university, which means interacting with people, which means discussing with people.
Sure.
So some of them don't like that, so they opt out of studying online. So which is what I'm doing. But for the most part, the options are there, and anyone, if they have the ability to, they could just study online.
Okay. That's a very fair perspective. It's very, very fair. Now, you mentioned your family as well, and that's been interesting, right? I am sort of the hub of information for my family. I would say that my family's pretty informed as a result of that. What's your family's reaction been to this, and has that affected you in any way, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think the reaction is sort of, well, we take precautions, right? Like I said, right, we wash our hands, we wear masks when we go outside, and things seems to be normal, but we're just being careful. And of course, like my mother, she she does a lot of reading, so she's kind of like updating everything for me.
Okay.
I'm just kind of following along, but for the most part, everything in my family is kind of normal at the moment. Not really panicking or anything. We're just going on with our lives, but taking a little extra step to be careful.
That's really what I just hope people do, right? Like, you don't have to be like an encyclopedia of what is going on in this world. You just have to be willing to take those precautions because, again, if everything turns out to be perfectly fine, which eventually it will, right? We're going to have medical advances. We're going to develop a vaccine. There is an end to this. That's something that we can all be confident in. But I think taking the precautions allows you to be safe rather than sorry.
Yeah,
So,
I do really think so, and it's also because our government we responded really quickly to this epidemic before it turned into a pandemic. That is, and a lot of things that are going on right now in Vietnam is a tribute to the government fast response to this. Because um, I have a page open over here because I don't remember everything, but um, so the on January 23rd, we confirmed the first 2 cases of COVID-19,
mm-hmm.
and just a few days after that, I think we declared state of emergency on nationwide emergency state
Okay.
a few days later, which means a lot of travel bans and some border shutdowns and a lot of tracking on which planes and boats are coming out from Wuhan to Vietnam. So because of that, we kind of did a lot of prepare stuff before it turned into out of hands like Italy and yeah.
Got it. Got it. So you really do feel like the government and all the agencies that operate within Vietnam made necessary and proper responses and choices in order to mitigate spread and more cases coming to Vietnam, it sounds like, etc., which is great.
Yeah, it's great, and also it is sort of like the correct response because we don't have the facilities to take care of so many people.
Right.
We have so on average, this is the statistic coming from Vietnamese New and officials, is that for each case of infected for each case of, as well quarantine and infected, we have around 12 doctors taking care of one patient, right?
Wow.
So it is important to just shut down everything and take a lot of precautions across nationwide, because 12 doctors per person, if we have like 1,000 cases, we're done. Like,
Right.
we're screwed. The
Yeah,
entire thing.
you,
So
you hit it.
it's
You hit
good
the
that,
threshold of
yeah,
what
we will
you're.
hit the threshold, and it's gonna be really bad, like Italy, which is really good because it didn't get to that point.
Yeah, and I think that's the fear that many other countries are. Right, we just had Gay Vulture call in from the UK, and the UK has definitely been a country that we've talked about where it seems like there's been a bit more of a lax attitude and approach towards things from a regulatory level, and we don't know how that's going to affect the country. Right? Maybe everything's fine, but in comparative response to what other countries are doing, it seems. Right. It seems low. It seems like looking at areas that have had success with containment or with mitigating spread, there have obviously been tactics, regulations, and strategies that have been probably very, very difficult decisions, but have been shown to support a positive effect on sort of what is happening.
Yeah, I agree too, and it's also because we are one of the countries that were hit with SARS in 2003, right?
Yes.
So we had experience with this before, and I think that also played a part in this.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it did, because there, like you had some context to what could happen. You had some context to how to prevent and mitigate it, and I'm just glad that is, something that you and your country were able to lean on in order to hopefully put you in a better situation than what some of the other countries are definitely dealing with right now. So.
Yeah, I know. And one of the things that I would like to touch on about is not only the response from the governments, but also from our own people as well. Because I think by around the beginning of January, when people were reading news in Vietnam about how the situation in Wuhan is going on, and we just see like the numbers going up and up and up. And even then, people were like, okay, this might get bad. So let's take precautions about this. And some of the tourist hotel in Vietnam, they refused to serve Chinese people, which is, well, kind of unfair for them.
Yes.
But you know what's going on, because if you people response to that is kind of sort of like a panic mode. So they see Chinese, they think that, okay, this guy might be infected, so they just refuse to service.
Yeah, we've had issues like that in the United States too, and it's a very sad thing to see.
Yeah, it's not on them though. It's just kind of bad that they got caught.
Yeah.
In the middle of that.
Yeah.
And And we did the same with the Korean.
Yeah. Right.
It's not really really nice people to do that, but I get where they come from. They take precautions for their family and all.
Well, dude, thank you so much for calling in. I've got one last caller that I promised to get through, and we've got just under 10 minutes to go. So, thank you so much. This is actually you're the first person I've had a chance to talk to from Vietnam, and I'm very happy to hear that. There's right. That's a bright light to me. That's very optimistic to hear that when the people come together, when the government knows what they need to do, and you take those precautions, that it can have a positive effect on things. So thanks for sharing that with us, and maybe we'll talk again in the future.
All right. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much. Take care, man. Bye-bye. All right, we're going to take our last caller. It's Very Big Brain. Very Big Brain, thank you for joining us. I also thank you for being patient. I'll warn you, we've got just under 10 minutes, and I apologize. I'm long-winded. So, but how's it going?
It's going pretty fine. I'm from Germany, Berlin.
Okay.
Just to get that out of the way.
Sure, thank you.
And I dropped in because of the comment I made in chat about testing.
Yes, I believe
Just
earlier
to clarify on that.
Yeah, please do.
So my information comes from the fact that my father works for Thermo Fisher Scientific, one of the 3 companies in the world to make the testing machines for the test currently used to detect SARS-CoV-2.
Wow.
He works in a different department, but in distribution as well. So he has access to the sales numbers of these machines and how often they're used and how often they're replaced and stuff like that. And he looked it up when it came up, and we talked about it last week. And the reason why places like Germany and South Korea have this testing capacity at the ready is because this test, it's called PCR, polymerase chain reaction, is very versatile but expensive relatively to other diagnostic tests, because it actually looks at the DNA of a virus, and it can basically, if you have a DNA profile for a virus, it can detect any virus. And Germany has a lot of these machines, especially it has machines in hospitals with people trained to use them, because there's a cooperation between German hospitals and German universities to track virus mutation rates. And for that, you have to do a DNA analysis.
Right.
So these machines are there and ready to use. Whereas in the US, labs have these machines, but they are not, and they're very centralized.
Yes.
So like a lab would have 10 of these machines instead of 10 machines being distributed to hospitals. And the hospitals, because they are hospitals, already run on a 24-hour cycle, whereas labs only run on a 12-hour cycle. So they have half the testing capacity as just in the normal course of operations.
That is super fascinating to me. Can I ask a question off of that then?
Yeah.
Having that like insight and information, I would imagine that your father was probably very capable of potentially seeing the outcome that was in front of us, right? Because if you understand the testing in those machines and you're aware about like the density of where these exist and the infrastructure in which they exist, like you mentioned, hospital versus a lab. I guess this 2-part question is, one, were you and your father kind of expecting, just based off of that understanding that we are where we are? And 2, being expensive and being something that probably isn't not just available at the ready, is there still, right, some concern in terms of like, how do we get more of these into people's hands and into the right infrastructures, et cetera?
Yeah, so he couldn't see it from far away because like he works in a different department.
Okay.
It's a big company. They make a lot of diagnostic equipment, and he works for a different department. So he had to actually go and look up the numbers.
Okay.
He doesn't work with them every day. But yeah, it was kind of foreseeable. There's a lot of these machines that can be brought up to like speed, running them on 24-hour cycles instead of 12-hour cycles. Takes about 6 hours with loading a machine, running the tests, and cleaning a machine between actually getting. So you can run about one set of tests, which is 50 per 6 hours per machine.
Okay. Wow. That seems also so low. I mean, I get it. I understand. We're talking about complex things happening, but
it's a very complex test
yes.
to basically decipher the DNA of the virus completely. It gives you a complete DNA, not a complete, but a rather accurate DNA profile that you then can compare. So it's very, very versatile and adaptable, but expensive. So it's not done often.
Yeah.
Unless the money is there, which in Germany, because socialized medicine and the hospitals and the universities are all paid for in large part by the German state. The German state said you can have more money to do this research, basically more widespread virus mutation research.
Right. Well, you know what? I mean, very big brain. I'm glad that you're our final caller, and I'm really appreciative that you called in to share that additional context with us. This is exactly why I really like doing this, right? Like it's amazing that you're able to call in and share this sort of insight and information. And I think it helps everyone with some understanding. And it certainly, obviously doesn't answer all the questions, but that's, you heard me talking a lot about why aren't things just more like South Korea? And this helps me contextualize that much more than I was able to even a couple hours ago. So I really do appreciate this information, and I wish that I had another hour to just sit here and talk to you and the many others that have wanted to call in or have stories to share or experiences. So maybe we'll be able to talk again next week or the next time we do a call. But thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, it was my pleasure.
Well, thanks again.
Now you have to go.
Yeah, I really wish that I did it. I'm always, I get to this point and I'm like, gosh, I wish I could just go another couple hours, but I also have to kind of go to work now. So, but thank you again, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you, and take care.
No problem. I will.
All
you
right.
too.
Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do wish that we could keep going. It has been a very enjoyable day, even though this is not necessarily an enjoyable topic to talk about. I enjoy it because this is a safe place where we can have respectful conversations. Thank you to everyone in chat who has been respectful, who has shared information, who has called in to, share their experiences. We continue to get a perspective on a global level that, to me, is beyond what I am seeing when I turn on the television. And for that, I really do appreciate it. Now, we will be continuing Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. However, based off of how things go over the next couple of days, there may be a chance that on Sunday I throw in an extra show so that we can continue this discussion. I think that given where we're at in the United States, we're going to see another ramp up of things here in the next 24 to 48 hours, as well as what's happening all around the world. So we'll be keeping a close eye on it, and I'd hope that you would follow the channel if you don't already. Follow me on Twitter at djWHEAT. Of course, I will let you know. Join the Discord. There's many ways for you to know when we're going live, and I typically try to announce things ahead of time. So we're going to keep doing this. Callers, you are what makes this great. I am just providing the platform, but hearing everyone's thoughts and experiences and stories has just been outstanding. And I cannot thank you enough for being willing to participate, to be a part of this, and to also spread the word and share that with others. And I would hope if there's anything that you would do, you would let people know that we're doing this. I can tell based off of your comments in Discord, your comments in chat, that this is helping, and there's moments of comfort, and there's also moments that are really scared. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We're all going to have to get through this together. This isn't a United States problem. This isn't a Vietnam problem. This isn't an Italy or Germany problem. This is a global problem. And we're doing something by helping people manage their lives through this and sharing information and making sure that people understand what is going on. So for that, I cannot thank you enough. I've got to sign off now, but again, thank you for joining us. I will see you for sure on Monday, but maybe on Sunday as well. So keep a lock on all of the social medias and everything, and we may see you then. Be safe, be healthy, be informed, wash your hands, and I love you all, and we're going to get through this together. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you next time here on twitch.tv/djWHEAT. I'm out of here. Peace.